Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is circles, more specifically, my circle and your circle. Um, Actually, before I even get started, let me go back and I want to take a second to thank everybody who called, sent text messages, sent tweets, messages on Instagram, congratulating me on my 500th episode, which was the episode before this. This is actually episode 501. Um, but yeah, I want to thank you guys. It really, put a smile on my face, and I really appreciate it. I'm not really one who does a lot, but when things happen, that make me smile, I really appreciate it. So, I'm thankful. I'm thankful. Uh, in fact, I wish I had time to talk about how King Germ from the Pod and Saved Our Marriage podcast and Uncle Dolomite from the Too Much Game podcast, two of my friends, called me on a 3-way call this past Friday and roasted me for about 10 minutes about how 12 Kyle was talking shit. And they said they had always heard me be humble, but I was on my shit talking phase, which I don't think I was, but I mean, it is what it is. But those dudes are crazy. So shout out to them, those two. And again, shout out to everybody who reached out. I really appreciate it. But anyway, I came back to this. I came to this episode talking about circles because I if you have Facebook and you put posts or stories, I put up a story like maybe 2 years ago, and the story was of a quote. And Facebook has this thing called Facebook Memories where they show you what you posted 2 or 3 years ago, whatever the case may be. And the story came up. I mean, the post came up in my Facebook memories or what have you of that particular post that I put on my Facebook story. And it was a quote from the late rapper Nipsey Hussle. And the quote reads as follows, quote, if you look at the people in your circle and you don't get inspired, you don't have a circle, you have a cage, close quote. And it made me think. It made me think to the line that he dropped in the song Victory Lap on his debut studio album, which was entitled Victory Lap as well. And so hearing that and hearing Nipsey and reading that quote made me think about, you know, just my circle, really. And I think one of the things that I took away from that was the fact that, my circle really hasn't changed much. Um, but I think a lot of us have had circles or people in our circle change. Uh, as he said in the song, circle got smaller, everybody can't go. And that stood out to me because it's like, you know, your circle at some point will get smaller as you grow. And that was another quote that I used to see all the time on Instagram and Facebook. It says, as you grow older, your circle will become smaller. Um, and I think that I think that that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment because as you get older, you know, maybe you kind of realize that some people in the circle may need to be there. Sometimes you have to replace people in your circle. Sometimes the circle gets too small for people's ego to be in your circle. Um, and so I think probably a couple of things that you have to do when it comes to your circle, um, particularly as you grow as a person. Um, the first thing I say you'd have to do is identify your circle. For me, it's quite simple. My circle goes like this: uh, associate, friend, crew. That's it. You're gonna fall in one of those categories. Of course, I'm not including family, but you're going to fall in one of those three categories: associate, friend, or crew. Um, as many of you know, or maybe you don't know, like my crew for the most part, I've been running with the same people. I've been running with the same people, man. If I'm being honest, literally all of my life. Um, from everybody like my boy Jay Fresh and I have been friends since we were 6 years old, and we talk or text like every day. And he lives in LA or Long Beach. I live in Atlanta. But even with the time difference, we still manage to talk or send texts or just bug out. But I mean, like we grew up together in Florence, South Carolina, and he's one of my best friends. But he's crew. Um, I was explaining to somebody like when Jay Fresh and I moved because we moved to Atlanta together, and we lived together in a town. We had a townhouse. We lived there for a year, and I was telling somebody that I remember this girl kind of she didn't really know us like that, but from afar she described us as like Dre and Big Boy from Outkast. And what was interesting was I was supposed to be Big Boy and he was supposed to be Dre because he was weird. And he is very much so weird. He may be one of the weirdest people you'd ever want to be around, but he's crew. And so, you don't ever turn your back on your crew. And it doesn't matter to me what the world thinks about him. That's my boy. So it's what I'm saying is you have to be able to identify who is in your circle and where they fit in your circle. Because as I mentioned, your circle will change, especially as you grow. Um, I can only think of, and I think here's the thing that I think if I can give myself some credit. Um, I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, right? So I've been very selective over the years who I've let become associates. I've been very selective over the years who I let become friends. And I've been very selective over the years of who I let become crew. I can't really say that I've missed when it comes to those three categories. I'm just being honest. And I think that's because I do a pretty good job of mentally vetting people, if you will. Um, and I think that's a quality that we all have, but sometimes, our friends be a little wild and we kind of ignore the signs. I'm not one of those. I am one of those people that I'm constantly getting information, processing information, and figuring out where you're gonna fit. And now at this age, I'm 50 now, so it's like it's easier to place people. You know what I'm saying? Because like I think when you're younger, you may be looking to expand that circle because maybe you want to network, maybe you want to get people involved, and maybe you want to actually bring more people into your life. I'll use myself as an example. When Fresh and I moved here to Atlanta in 1997, we didn't know anybody. I mean, we literally only knew each other, and so we didn't know anybody in the city. We didn't know our way around the city, and so naturally, you would try to evolve and meet as many people as you can, get to know them, let them get to know you, kind of network to see where and if they could help or if you could help them and vice versa. Um, and I think sometimes when you're doing something like that, it's easy to get burned, if you will, right? But, but, but it never happened to me. I will say what did happen, and again, I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, but I did have one misstep. Um, there was somebody who I thought was a friend and who I thought was potentially could be crew because we hung out together. Turned out to be more of an associate than anything else. And that's cool. And here's what happened. And I'll never forget it because at the time, I want to say we were expecting our first son, Dion. So Sharice and I were expecting our first son. And I remember talking to this friend, or at least I thought he was a friend. And this was maybe the summer before Dion was born. Dion was born in August, so he was about to be born. Basically, I was about to become a father, and I happened to see this friend, and I said, we were talking, and I was telling him, about how excited I was, and looking forward to becoming a father, and Dion was about to be here and everything like that. And he looks at me and he says, I'm about to be a father too. Oh, word? Really? He's like, yeah, you remember Shorty? I was like, old girl from the club? Yeah, 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 Shorty. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm about to be a dad. I was like, oh, word. I was like, when is she due? He was like, oh, she's due at the end of the year. I was like, oh, wow. I was like, so when did you find out? He's like, oh, I found out like, 4 or 5 months ago. Huh? To me, that was a red flag. Cause my thing is, if we're as tight as I think we are, then I ain't saying I should have been the first person you called, but I should have been somebody that you called at some point to say, hey man, guess what? I'm about to be a dad. I don't know if he was embarrassed because she was for the streets. I don't know if he was, embarrassed because he wasn't sure if it was his child, but he knew it was. I don't know what the case was, but at the end of the day, I mean, like, I didn't like the way that came off. Like it was just like, oh yeah, hey, guess what? Like, I mean, he said it so casually, like, yeah, I'm about to be a dad too. Like almost like, yeah, I bought some Jordans yesterday. So I guess what it taught me was like, maybe, just maybe, we're not as tight as I thought we were. And that's cool. Don't get me wrong. I had no ill feelings. No, I'm not tripping off nothing like that. But it what that interaction taught me was I could place him into this particular arena as far as an associate and be cool with it. Wherein I thought maybe he might, well, I knew he was a friend, but I thought maybe he could be crew. And, you got to spend some time with people to become crew. And we had spent some time together, but, he wasn't crew. And that's cool. Trust me. No, I have no issues with him not being crew. The only difference was that I made a misstep in my calculation because I thought that he was, but he really wasn't. Um, because I think that if you're a crew or if you're a friend, even for that matter, like I said, if you're expecting your first child, I think, you pick up a phone or you come by the crib and say, hey, guess what? You don't, or hey, let's go out for drinks. I'm celebrating because I'm a father. My thing is, you found this out 4 or 5 months ago and you're just now telling me? Come on, man. What are we doing here? Because I wouldn't have done that to you. But again, I hold different things at different levels for my friends, for my crew, not as much for my associates. It is what it is. Um, I think ultimately you have to identify what the foundation is of your circle. Um, like I said, Nipsey said, circle got smaller, everybody can't go. And everybody can't go. It can't. It just you just don't have that trajectory. I know some people who have. Now, I will say this much before I even go into the next point. I think I'm probably one of the few people who have a lot of friends. And I'm not saying that bragging. I mean, like I genuinely have a good deal of friends and people who call me friends. And I mean, even through this podcast, I've been able to expand my friendship because, as I mentioned before in previous episodes, there are people who probably listen to this podcast who I've never talked to, but they may consider me to be a friend because they feel like they know me through this podcast. And I have no problem with that. And then I've made friends along the way through this journey, through this podcast. Um, and the thing I'll say is when you talk about your foundation of your circle, your foundation has to be tight. It has to be tight. When I look around my crew, I think everybody really embodies, what it is that I want from my crew to be because that's just who they are. They're solid men and women. And I do say women because I do have women friends in my crew who are just as solid as my dudes. Um, one thing Communication. Communication is paramount because I think obviously even as friends, as crew, if you can't communicate, then I mean, what are we doing? What are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like there's if we don't communicate, I don't really know how you can consider yourself to be crew or a friend for that matter. Um, and I'll give you an example. Like Jay Fresh and I talk, like I said, all the time. But I may have somebody in my crew that I don't talk to every day or don't talk to every, um, month or so. Maybe we might talk a month, maybe two. It may never more than 2 months go by. But I have members of the crew that I don't talk to on a day-to-day basis, but we're still tight, and we literally, I mean, even like Jamel. Jamel is you've heard Dr. Jamel on here. We're crew. Um, I may go a couple of weeks without talking to Jamel, and when we talk on the phone, we literally pick up like where we left off. So it's not like there's not any lull, there's not any. We catch up, we talk, we laugh, the whole nine. And I think that's important because I think, again, that's the foundation of communication, foundation of our circle, foundation of my circle. One of the pillars of that foundation is communication. If you can't communicate with your friends, your best friends, your boys, your girls, I mean, are you really tight? I mean, you can't get on Instagram and say, well, hey, yo, this is my dog, this is my no, I mean, that's for show. I'm talking about people who are there when the lights aren't on, when there isn't any filters, the people who are there when times are rough. And not everybody's going to have great times, but you know, those people, I think there's something to be said for those who, and I can only speak for myself, those who knew you when you didn't have anything, as opposed to those who know you now and you got something, whatever that something is. Um, but yeah, communication is a huge pillar of the foundation of your circle. Um, Trust is another pillar of the foundation of your circle. Um, it goes without saying. I mean, like if you don't have trust, you don't have anything. I mean, that's I don't know what else to tell you if you don't have trust in your crew or your friendship or your circle or even with your associates. You should be able to trust your associates. Um, and even if you give them very little information, you still should be able to trust them. But trust is big for me. Um, because I think, trust isn't something that everybody that you can give everybody because you can trust people. It's some people you can only trust them as far as you can throw them. And that's just what it is. Others, I think it's important that the trust is there and that it's shown and you don't have to question whether or not you trust someone. Hang on a second, let me grab some water. Get kind of thirsty from talking all this blood. Um but trust is important. I mean, it is paramount for any type of association that you would have with someone, any type of friendship that you would have with someone, any type of dealings that you would have within your crew if you can't trust somebody. Um, I feel like if you're that close to me, then I'm supposed to trust you with my last. Or I'm supposed to trust you with my money, or I'm supposed to trust you with my family. And that's that. And like you don't have any there's no gray area there. There's no type of gray area. It is you either are or you aren't. There's no in between. And one of the other pillars of the foundation of your circle, um, for me, is loyalty. Uh, I would say unequivocally, and I think anybody that knows me well enough will tell you this. I'm extremely loyal to a fault. I'm never going to abandon the people that I came up with. I'm never going to, and it's funny because it's like I remember like one of my favorite athletes of all time is Allen Iverson, aka Bubba Chuck. And so I remember when early in his career when Bubba Chuck was getting into trouble Um, you hear these announcers. He should just leave his friends. His friends are bad for business. And I'm like, man, y'all don't know. Like this dude, his friends are probably the only people that he can trust. Can't trust the fans. Can't trust the organization because the organization is his employer. You can't trust the people in the streets that's coming at you. The only people that you can trust are the people that literally have been down with you since day one. Now, on the flip side of that, you can't have your friends getting you into trouble, um, or leading you towards trouble. But at the same time, like to tell Allen Iverson that his man from fifth grade that he's been running with before he was Bubba Chuck, you know, that he got to get rid of him because he's got a criminal record. Come on, man, that don't make any sense. I mean, you have to trust that he's going to make the right decisions with his friends, and his friends will make the right decisions as far as keeping him in or out of situations. But other than that, come on, man, listen, what are we talking about here? But he was extremely and still appears to be extremely loyal to those friends. Now it gets kind of tricky because once the money gets involved, then all you got is these hanger-ons and stuff like that. But then once the money gone, then what? I'd like to think that I don't think my crew or my friends will change if I became a multimillionaire tomorrow. I really don't. I call me crazy, call me delusional in the belief of the people around me, but I really don't think that they'll change. I don't think they'll have their hands out, honestly. Um, it might be one or two, but well, in fact, well, I know one for sure will have his hand out, but that's cool. That's just where he is right now. But I love him nonetheless. But yeah, loyalty is extremely important. I mean, like particularly if you never did anything to have me question your loyalty to me, then no, we solid all the way through. We are solid all the way through. I mean, like, and I've been told that I'm loyal to a fault. But again, it's hard for me not to be loyal because I feel like that's one of the everything that I'm asking and requiring of my circle, I'm giving. So the communication, the trust, the loyalty, I'm giving that in return 100-fold because I really believe in that because I don't want anybody to be like, oh man, 12 Kyles or KD is washy. No, I'm not washy. I'm as solid as they come. And I think um if you ever get a chance to meet me, you'll see that I'm what you see is what you get. Ain't nothing changed. Ain't nothing changed but the name. I mean, like I'm still the same. But yeah, loyalty is extremely important to me. And because I don't think we have a lot of loyalty around. And I mean, like, um, another inspiration for this particular episode was the aforementioned Uncle Dolomite on his podcast, Too Much Game, a couple of days ago. He was just talking about, um, your circle of friends and how they interact with you and the things that you have to pay attention to as well. And I mean, he touched on a lot of different stuff, man, but those things kind of stood out to me. So check out that podcast, Too Much Game podcast. Um, but I think like loyalty and your friendship and the trust and the communication, all of that stuff goes hand in hand. And so if I can't trust you, I really can't expect you to be loyal to me. If I can't communicate with you, I really can't expect you to be loyal to me because again, if we can't communicate, then at some point I'm going to end up questioning you. And if I question you, then what does that say about me? What does that say about us? What does that say about our circle? Again, your circle is to me is everything. And I think like, what's important to me in my circle is that everybody stays solid. Uh the thing about crews is I can have Jay Fresh in my crew, but Jay Fresh might not be cool with I'll just say he might not be cool with Fred. He is, but that's another story for another day. But let's say he's not cool with Fred, but but Fred is in my crew. Fred and Jay Fresh don't have to be cool for them to be in my crew. Um, the only thing is that they remain solid to the soil with me, and that's the thing that's important. And I think sometimes as we get older, we mistake what we think is friendships for the superficial things. And friendships to me, circles to me, is more than just brunch on Sundays. It's more than just, going to the club, getting slizzard and having a good time. It's more to it than just, playing spades. It's together. It's a lot of things. It's every single day, all of the things that encompass what goes on through your life. And it's more importantly about being there. I would rather be there for a friend than to take a friend out to brunch on Sundays. I mean, that's just me. I want to be the one that when you call, I'm solid and I'm answering the phone. And I'm not ducking your phone calls. Um, and you're not ducking my phone calls. um, but yeah, I think all of that stuff contributes to the circle. And again, we all have to monitor and be realistic about our circle. And I'll go back to the quote that Nip said: "If you look at the people in your circle and you don't get inspired, you don't have a circle, you have a cage." And that is so true. Like, even in my circle, I'm not the smartest person in my circle by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not the smartest person in my crew. I'm very smart, but we all push each other. We all inspire each other. We all motivate each other. We joke each other. Um, some of the biggest jokes that I get, is from people in my crew. And while you guys love this podcast, these guys have so many jokes about my podcast. And so, but it's all in good fun, and it's all in jest, and it's all in love. Um, but I think at the end of the day, we're all inspired by each other. And I'll give you an example before I get out of here. Like, I remember specifically my crew when we were in middle school, my crew from back home. eh, We were in middle school, and like one guy got an A, and then the next person got an A on the test. And I missed the test because I was out of school sick. And then so I came back and I wanted to get an A on the test too, because my homies had already gotten A's. And it's just like, that's the kind of stuff like you should be motivated. So when your friend gets a new car, you should be motivated. Not necessarily that you got to go get a new car, but you should, one, be motivated. You should be also happy for your friend. I mean, who doesn't celebrate their friend's success, and be just as happy for their friend's success? If you can't be happy for your friend and any type of success they're having, then who are you? What are you doing as a friend? Again, if you look at the people in your circle and you don't get inspired, you don't have a circle, you have a cage. That is, I mean, like, it doesn't get any more simpler than that. And so what I want everybody to take away from this podcast and those quotes is that, like, examine your circle. Nip said it best. Circle got smaller. Everybody can't go. As you continue to rise, and as you continue to do certain things and grow as a person, everybody ain't going with you. Hopefully, hopefully, your crew can go with you. Your friends can go with you. Your associates can go with you. But in reality, they may not all come. And that's okay. And you have to be okay with it being okay. Because ultimately, it's about you and your circle and what you're trying to accomplish. That's going to do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. Now, if you feel inclined and you feel happy and you like what you hear and you want to bless the podcast, hit us up, send us a couple of dollars. Cash App, $ TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. This has been the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's. Cheers.